talking about having those conversations with Bob Giulio, and at what point does it become, hey man, we're doing this thing?
Yeah.
Like, talk to us about that moment.
Yeah. So so it was the Friday of the USDGC, the United States Disc Golf Championships, and I can't remember if it was text or call, but it was Bob, and he said, "Hey, are you at Winthrop, which is Rock Hill, South Carolina?" I said, "No, I'm home." He said, "Okay." He said, "Sign an NDA, send it over to me. I'll sign it. We'll talk on Monday." I'm like, "Come on, man!
With no information,
You cannot do that." Yeah.
Bob, what are you doing to me, man?"
Sure.
That's like a high school girlfriend saying, "We need to talk later."
Yeah.
No,
On Monday.
No, we need
And
to
it's
talk
Friday.
now. It's now. Yeah.
So,
But Bob, you trust Bob, so you just signed it.
yeah, I mean, from March, April, when I first talked to Bob, like I started to closely watch him, watch Discraft, and kind of see what they're doing. Like, because I followed them working in the industry, but I kind of put them under not a telescope, but a microscope.
Yeah.
Brian.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched them a lot closer, and they just kept hitting, doing lots of good things, and then I'm seeing that they're propping up the sport from the pro tour level. Like, they're sponsoring tons of events. They're out there doing things. They're sponsoring more players when other companies are pulling back, and I'm like, all right, this is a company that if they offered me a job, I'd have to think long and hard about it. And then here's Bob with sign an NDA. We'll talk on Monday. Mm-hmm. And so, it was after a couple sleepless nights. We got on the phone Monday, and he laid it out there. He said, "Hey, we've signed Ken Climo. We want to start. We're starting a brand, Climo Disc Golf, and we want you to run it." And yeah, my jaw kind of dropped, because for anyone that knows disc golf and the history of disc golf, Ken Climo, one of the greatest players of all time, if not the, closely associated with Innova. Ken had been kind of gone from the game, more or less, minus a few appearances here and there with commentary or other random things. But yeah, I can't say that my mind ever went to, like, yeah, maybe it'd be running a brand, or working with Ken Climo, or doing, like, I had no idea what to expect. Also because I've done a very wide variety of things in disc golf. Not that I'm an expert or great at all those things, but I've done a lot of different things. So it's like, maybe they're starting a course program, or maybe they're this or that. But no, it was just out of left field. We've signed Ken Climo, and we want you to run the brand.
Damn.
Did Ken have to leave Innova to do this, or was he already parted ways with Innova?
He had to leave Innova.
So before we start talking about what you're doing to build the Climo brand and what it all entails, I'm very curious about, like, why Innova didn't do more with the greatest name of all time in the sport.
I don't know if they could answer that question. It seems like nobody could really give a good answer, as far as I've seen.
Maybe they just felt like what they had been doing was fine, and there was no reason, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of a thing.
Honestly, I can't comment. Because I don't know. I'm not quite sure if they weren't interested, didn't see the value, or Ken wasn't. I think there's, in all reality, it was probably a variety of things from both sides, is my assumption. I haven't, tried to figure out the answer to that. I'm far too busy, far too many other important, pressing things that. But yeah, it was kind of like, all right, okay, guys, you're just gonna let them go, or whatever. And I don't know what negotiations there were or weren't between Ken and Innova. But whatever Bob pitched to him, Ken liked, and Innova didn't match or wasn't interested or whatever. And so yeah, the time was
I gotta
right for
imagine
Ken.
from Ken's perspective, like, and I don't mean this as any disrespect to Dunapace, but like, Bob's pretty cool. Like a guy like Bob comes to you and says, "Yo, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that," and you've not really had those opportunities. Like, yeah, Ken's name is on discs, but like, and I don't know, I've never talked to Ken, but the word on the street is that Innova's never really had him too closely tied to the things that they were doing. They were just like, "Yo, we're gonna put your name on it," and it's just whatever. Okay, I'll get royalties. So like when a guy like Bob is coming to you and saying, "Yeah, you're going to do all the things you probably wished you could have been doing for the last 25 plus years," who's going to say no to that?
Yeah.
You know?
The interview with him and Brian Earhart was a pretty phenomenal
Yes, it was.
interview. He was very candid about his views on what Innova wasn't doing and had not been doing. He doesn't get crazy detailed about it, but like he didn't really hold back on any of it. It was really great. A few of the things that he was saying was exactly that, like
Mm-hmm.
to have control over the discs themselves
Mm-hmm.
and making them what he wanted and what he knew would work and what would fly and what would sell is like you could see the light in his eyes.
Totally.
When he was talking.
I mean,
about
we've all been in this game for a little while now. And, Kenny has stepped out in and out of the game for health reasons or whatever, but there's been plenty of overlap in my time in the game where Ken could have been doing the things with Innova Discs or talking about the product the way that I've been seeing in the last month. Like seeing the video content with him throwing, talking about how they're building those discs, why the plastic types. I mean, it's amazing. It's what I've always wished I could have seen with Ken this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
That should have been happening this whole time. It wasn't until now.
Yeah.
Growing up, getting into disc golf at like age 15, and seeing Ken Climo's name on discs, I had no idea what the dude looked like. I had no idea. I knew nothing other than apparently Ken Climo is like a big deal in disc golf.
Right.
And it was years and years and years of being in the sport before I ever started to like see what he looked like and have an idea of like who he was.
Right.
And that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, seeing everything that I'm seeing now on social media is like, it stings a little bit because it's like what could have been, but in that same
what better time than now?
Exactly.
Like,
the other side of that coin is like,
yeah.
You have an opportunity to like write history a little bit. It's like
Yeah, and one of the things that really drew me to not that I needed a whole lot of pushing is that it's about Ken, it's about disc golf, it's about his legacy, like, and being a part of that. And for me, that was really enticing to be a part of, to be a part of bringing him back to disc golf. And I think that for me in my career, and as I mentioned earlier, I've done a lot of different things. Like this was the right time for this position, for this move, and I'll tell you what I said to Bob. I said, I'll tell it to you guys now. I'm built for this. This is building this brand and setting a strong foundation and being a part of it. Like this is where I should be.
Yeah, you can do it because you have done all the other things that you have done in disc golf. Like you literally have all of the things to be able to make that statement.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the case for a lot of people in the sport. Like you have all those building blocks.
How does the infrastructure at Climo Disc Golf work? Is it its own entity, or is it just solely owned by Discraft and they get the final say, or are they just funding it, or like how is it working behind the scenes?
It's a part of Discraft,
Okay.
so it's a standalone brand within Discraft, and we are right now. I'm the lone Climo employee, whereas we have there's a ton of Discraft employees and resources that I'm utilizing. So so it's not just me. There's a lot of people working behind the scenes, and a lot of people that are doing all these great things with Discraft. Now maybe a little 5%, 10, 20% of their time might be spent working with me on the Climo brand and building that out.
How much time is Ken Climo himself, like, in the warehouse, or like working on that stuff, or is he just tracking discs in the field and working on that, or is he like, how much of the whole thing is he generally a part of?
He's been a part of damn near everything, and
That's
that's by in part that's by design, and in part because that's what I think is right, especially for launching the brand. And where things were with him and Innova, where it sounds like, I think I heard him say in an interview, like, or maybe it was a conversation with me, but like talking about the rock, the KC rock and the 8-time rock, and how he, provided feedback. No, I want it like this, or I want it like that, and they got it right. And then, the next year, he wins. So they make the 9-time rock, and it's a different mold. It's a different rock mold. And then just knowing that, what he said, or what I know, is that, he hasn't been involved and hasn't, had a voice in the room. So for me, one of the most important things was to involve Ken and to have his DNA all over this, because it's, Climo Disc Golf. It's not Dana Disc Golf. You can, at Dana Disc Golf, you can follow me on Twitter if you'd like. This is Climo Disc Golf. And so, from the branding to obviously the discs and the molds, like, he's super interested in that part of the game. But even like the naming and everything, like, between myself, Bob, and some others, we've brainstormed. But a lot of the stuff, I brought to the table and said, I think this is what we should call this or that, and it all runs through Ken.
I'll make a correction. Dana hits me up, then I let him know my ideas. Then he brings those ideas
puppet master
back to them. Just so we're clear.
And then Sean calls Jason.
Is that how these leaks are happening?
Yeah.
Dude, it's Jay the whole time.
Yeah.
Holy
I am
shit.
pretty leaky.
Follow the Total Lean Instagram account. All
Sure. Yeah.
All the reels are coming out of there.
Yeah. So let me, my limited time with you, Dane, is you are very behind the scenes in the world of disc golf. And it sounds like you've seen the peaks and now have seen a valley as well. So you've kind of run the gamut of the possibilities of what's happening behind the scene in disc golf. What's different about Climo Disc Golf that has your appeal? How is this not just more of the same with another professional's face on it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I kind of go back to what I said earlier, is that it's about Ken and preserving and enhancing his legacy versus, yes, it's a business, but first and foremost, it's about Ken Climo and what he's done for disc golf and making sure that that's not forgotten. Mm-hmm. And so giving him, what's due and what's right. And so, yeah, we need to sell discs and make money because it's a business, but first, let's take care of Ken. Let's make sure he's involved. Let's make sure he's taken care of and happy and involved in disc golf where he wants to be involved. Whether that's, playing a huge role in making the discs or picking the logos or, the names or whatever it is, like making sure Ken feels involved and taken care of and is happy. And then ultimately, like, the disc golf world has a Climo disc that they can, if they're interested in, they can try out.
We've gotten the prototypes. We've just seen the first runs.
Mm-hmm.
I have generally taken the stance that a lot of Discraft plastic feels like melted down He-Man and McDonald's Happy Meal toys.
That's such a bizarre thing.
And
sometimes
it has become a lot less of that as the years have progressed. But 10 years ago, the plastic was just not to my liking, right? Not that they were doing anything wrong. I just didn't like it. These Climo discs feel a lot different to me. They feel a lot better to me. I'm more used to, like, I'm a Swedish plastic guy, right? And these feel a lot gummier and more
tackier.
More appealing.
They're not
to
slick.
Me.
Yeah.
What is different about the plastics and the discs than the normal Discraft? Yeah. Or is it all the same and I'm just full of shit? I don't know.
Well, you're full of shit.
Okay.
First. Second, these blends and then molds are made to Ken's wishes and liking, and he right now prefers a slightly softer plastic. And so what we've done is work with the blends that Discraft has and then tweak them to Ken's specifications, and then doing a little something different with the mold itself, where they're coming out almost old school Castoplast or even new school. Like I think that's probably the best comp that I have.
True. Yeah.
Like, so if you're like a Discraft head and you love Discraft plastic and stuff, the Climo plastic is nothing like what you're going to see from Paul Macbeth line, any of their players, signature discs, any of that. And so if that's kind of cool if you're a Discraft head, and if you're a Discraft hater or you're not a fan,
as he gestures to Ryan.
I don't hate.
I know
It wasn't my thing.
If their plastic isn't your thing because it's too stiff or slick or whatever, because that's what a lot of the pros like and
That is true.
want. It's something different. It's coming out of Wixom, Michigan. It's made in the Discraft factory. It's their own blends, their own molds, and again, all made to what Ken wants, what he feels, what he wants to feel in his hand, and what he ultimately wants to throw.
Do you think you will bag any of the stuff?
I'm bagging the stuff.
Not because you have to, but like, will you actually throw it and use it? Is it to your liking and your style, or is it just?
Yeah, no, good question. So right now we have three molds out: putter, a mid, and then a distance driver. The putter is called the Champ, and that's a beaded putter. So I'm coming off putting with the P1. I've putted with the P1X. I've putted with the P2, and so yeah, for me switching over to a beaded putter, whatever. Like, it's putting. It's lower profile. If it was a deep dish, I might have a problem with it. But switching over, putting is mostly mental, and then just building repetition. So to switch putters isn't for me a big deal as long as I have something that feels okay in my hand, and the Champ does. It's not like a KC AVR, which is something that I've seen from the internet. It's just a KC AVR, a Rock, and a Wraith. Whereas the putter, the Champ, is, it's similar to a Big B, but I'd actually say it's closer to a Discmania P1X, and even maybe a little more lower profile than a P1X. Like P1X, a lot of them are deeper dish, where I think the Champ, these first runs molded up a little more shallow, which is really not, feels really good in the hand. It's throwable if you want to grip and rip it, or putting, whatever. And then the mid, the Bel Air is a beaded mid range. I'd say that its best comp is it flies like a buzz, but it has a bead. Or you could comp it to a Rock. And then the Speed 11 is the Skyway, and that's it's just middle of the road distance driver. What I said on one of the promos, it's great for a variety of arm speeds. Like, I have mid 400 power, and I can throw it flat and get a nice S flight, or I can throw it on a hyzer and have it pop up and ride. But
I really liked. There was a video of him, and it was in that Brian Earhart interview when they were in the indoor soccer field.
Oh yeah,
and he's throwing that specific disc, and he says, I'm going to give it this and this and this angle. And he tries to turn it over it and doesn't quite get it. And it just kind of hyzers out. He's like, huh. And then he throws it again, and it annies and it sails, and it flexes all the way through it. And it was like, holy shit, that was the same disc. That's crazy that, just a little bit of tweaking could make it fly in those completely opposite lines. It looked really neat to throw.
Yeah. You need to be the tester, Ryan, of all of us.
Oh.
You're the guy that throws all the different stuff in the bag.
That's true.
I have a contract. I'm exclusively Tasmanian. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
But you have to you got to test this stuff out.
Yeah.
I feel like that putter's right in your wheelhouse.
It is.
And those all of them.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah. I will. I have all three now, so.
And I have to say, all the, like you said, internet comparisons. Oh, it's just AVR Rock Wraith. No, first and foremost, but the to compare it to KC, the texture of the Champ is that of a putter that feels good to the majority of my customers. No one is coming in and ever going, can you make it slicker? You know, like a KC Pro AVR is like super slick, doesn't have the touch, doesn't have that like tack that most people are looking for, but the Champ does.
Mhm.
And the major line blend is just like, Ken, keep it, whatever you're doing, keep it up. If that's what you like, I think a lot more people like that plastic. You know, you mentioned pros wanting stiffer blends. Well, that's less than 1% of people that are buying discs.
Yep.
So if you really want to please the masses and speak to the people, make the molds that work for what you want, but also keep in mind that, you know, they're throwing it at half the arm speed as most people. So
Yeah, and that's an important thing to note about the Climo brand is like our goal is to make, you know, throwable discs.
Right.
You know, Ken is 56. He'll be 57 later this month. Arm speed is slowing down.
sure.
My arm speed is also slowing down, so I'm happy for more throwable discs.
Totally.
And even the softer stuff, I feel like you can get a better grip and get more rotations on it, and then ultimately a better flight or longer flight. But yeah, Ken has got like when that guy has a disc in his hand or he's talking disc golf, he lights up.
Mhm.
Like that's where he's, you know, alive.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's been super cool. And you mentioned the Brian Earhart and Jomez. That if you haven't watched it, it was just really well done.
Yeah, it
And
definitely humanizes
Phenomenal.
him
Yep.
as well. Yeah, one of the things that struck me a long time ago about this brand that makes me feel like it's going to be successful and that you are in 100%, and you are genuine about your excitement and your vision for Climo Disc Golf is we were talking at Hell's Gate during one of the Hellwood things, and you were super excited about the molds that you were showing us. You had the prototypes. And then you said the phrase, and I'm not just drinking the Kool-Aid. And it's so easy to be in the position that you are, getting a call by Bob and just being dragged into this, thinking, oh my God, this is the, you know, lifetime goal, you know, like this is a dream of mine, and just being sucked down the rabbit hole of this is the greatest thing that could have ever happened. But you saying like, these are great, and I understand that I could be drinking the Kool-Aid, but I am not, and I'm taking the perspective of like really getting into understanding how this is working, and I'm very excited about it. That it makes me super excited about this brand.
Yeah.
So
Same. The first time I heard you say that it's about securing the legacy for Ken, that statement was the thing that made me fall in love with the concept. I didn't get it until I heard that. And I didn't think of it that way because I think that we're kind of trained within the industry that just like, you know, everybody sees it year after year, another brand comes along. Everybody's got the new thing that we should all be using. But, you know, I feel like that's kind of like been done so many times at this point that it's difficult to hear another brand coming on the market. You know, everybody kind of goes, oh, okay, right? But then once you hear the statement that you said about, you know, securing the legacy for Ken, like him having what he should have always had, and that to me is like, yes, that is why you do what you guys are doing. So I love it.
It's a real symbol to me that you have your finger on the pulse of what it means to build a brand, because everybody says, you know, people don't buy your product, they buy why. They buy why that product exists, and leading with because Ken's legacy and making sure that Ken is involved in every aspect of it and he's happy with it, and focusing on that's a why that everybody can get behind. And, you know, everything else falls in line. If you're following a North Star that people can get behind, I don't see how it could not work out.
Right.
Let's cross our fingers.
Yeah.
So we've got Skyway, the driver, the 11-speed stable driver. We've got Bel Air, the stable mid. We've got the Champ we talked about. What else can we look for in the future? I know you've dropped some names on me. Like, what else can we look for coming up?
So real quick, the names. That's been super fun to like build a brand and like come up with names. Like for me, and I think we probably talk. I don't. If you guys know, I don't remember a lot of things about the podcast and what I've said and done. But you know, I go back to like the Roaming Thunder and like why that. was important to me and meaningful. And so like I wanted to bring that to the Climo brand and not just have names that are, pulled out of the sky, which is fine. But all the names are, have been carefully chosen, with the major line being the top end plastic. Major is the highest, tier of event that you can win. And then the next plastic that we'll have. So that major line is like an opaque premium. The best comps would be for Discraft ESP, Innova Star, S line. And then, for that Z or Champion or C line, we're going to call that the Victory line. And then the base plastic is the Trophy line. So kind of tiers, the Major and then the Victory and then the Trophy line. So I was really pleased with how that all worked out. And then the names of the discs are all kind of like tied to Ken in various ways. Ken is a lifelong resident of Clearwater, Florida. His nickname, if you don't know, is the Champ. So, building, the putter around his name made a ton of sense. And I thought that was great. And then the Bel Air, he grew up on Bel Air Road.
Cool.
The first, he first played golf at the Bel Air Golf Club or Bel Air something. That's ball golf. And then the Skyway. It's the Skyway Bridge from that connects like Tampa and Clearwater and all of that. So all the names are ultimately going to be tied to Ken. And so that's been fun to kind of like try to, from my corner of the world and here in Illinois and far from Ken and all of that, like to figure out what names that make sense and then that that are interesting also. And so we've got the first three. The next one is the Osprey, and that is going to be a speed 10, and it's going to be an understable thrower. So for me, I've been testing it quite a bit over the last few weeks, and I've got to put a pretty stiff hyzer on it. Ryan, stiff hyzer.
Like good. The amount of pause there.
Look deep, hard.
Yeah.
Like really,
really deep, and stiff.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not built for me, not built for headwinds, but a very throwable disc.
That's fun.
And honestly, we had hoped to release that earlier, but we weren't able to get the weights down. And that's one of the other things that is important for the Climo brand is like for the drivers, at least, to being able to scale down in weight. So some molds, it's easier to get 150 class, 160s. So the Osprey kind of tinkered and worked on that mold for a while. And I think we got it in a place where we want it to be. I'm not sure if we can get into 150 class, but I think we're getting into the 160s. So that's
cool.
That's great. So that one, the hope is we'll release the prototype version of that early April. And my intent is to put that out into the wholesale network, where we're just kicking that off with the first runs. We sold those at wholesale just to brick and mortar stores for in-store sales only. So that's another thing that I wanted to do was to step up and support brick and mortar shops. Not just because, Sean and Sheila love and respect them and what they do, but, the disc golf shop, it's so important for disc golf. It's a place to go. It's a vibe. It's a scene. It's, they're doing the thing. And so oftentimes what I've seen and what I've learned and experienced, and also, probably been on the other side of is, the manufacturers sometimes are taking, making discs and selling them direct to consumer. And so the retailers specific, and especially the brick and mortars kind of feel left out when they're the ones out on the front lines, like introducing people to the sport, doing all the things that make disc golf go. So I wanted to support the brick and mortars, B, get our feet under us, like, not flood the market with tons and tons of discs right off the bat, like kind of ease into it. And now that we've done that with the first runs, so if you're interested, head out to your local brick and mortar shop, or We are selling them from the Climo Disc Golf store, climodiscgolf.com. But I highly encourage you to go to a shop and buy a disc, or buy a Climo disc, or any disc. Bring cookies.
Yeah, that always helps.
Just support your local shops. So, but yeah, the Osprey, I'm hoping that we're able to release that both wholesale and then direct to consumer sometime in early April.
Sick.
Mm-hmm.
You got them at the shop?
Oh yeah, we got all of them. Yeah, we've had them at the show. They released on the 11th.
3/11.
Yeah, Monday.
I'm ready.
Tuesday. It was Tuesday.
I'm ready to make changes.
All at the shop. You got to come feel them. I mean, like we said, it's a
well, like I said,
techie
my
touch.
goal is to fall back in love with playing disc golf this year, and maybe some exciting new plastic could.
Well,
could
you
help.
know people that do it constantly, so
Yeah.
just come to the place.
Will do. So we're getting close to time, but there's one other question I wanted to touch on before we hand the controls over to Jason for the return of the trivia portion of the night.
The motherfucking trivia portion of the night.
Very excited for that. But my question is a combination of two different questions that Sheila provided. And it's about working with Ken, who's from a different generation than you. And, building a brand is so much about having your finger on the pulse of like what's happening with content and media. So I guess I'm curious, what is it like working with Ken in that regard? Like, is he looking to you to kind of tell him, what is the move here, content-wise and sort of, brand strategy-wise? Or is it a good mix of you two both putting ideas in and you feel like he knows the right direction for us to go? Or talk about the dynamic between you two and figuring those things out.
Yeah, more so it's myself or Shane, who's the Discraft marketing director. We're working together, and then obviously Bob. We're kind of putting our heads together and coming up with ideas, and then bringing them to Ken, or I'm bringing ideas to Ken, or I'm not saying I'm Ken's agent or anything, but lots of opportunities for Ken are now coming to me.
So you're filtering through them.
They're filtering through me, so I'm bringing them to Ken, and it may not have anything to do with Climo Disc Golf, but I think part of the success of Climo Disc Golf is opportunities for Ken to be back in disc golf in a meaningful way, and not just at a tournament selling discs. Like, I think for this to be as successful as it can be, is we need to build a strong foundation for the brand through Ken Climo as a person, and Ken Climo in the sport, and him being involved, whether that's playing. He played in a flex start. He's playing in 4 Climo Launch Series flex starts around Florida, which is incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome.
He hasn't been able to play due to injury, so 1-round flexors are actually perfect for him, or bringing him commentary opportunities, or whatever it might be. So Ken's not necessarily saying, all right, I think we should do this. It's more so like, I'm kicking the can around, I'm calling Sean, or I'm talking to Bob, or talking with Shane, and we're coming up with ideas, and or they're coming to us, and then kind of pitch it to Ken and say, all right, can you make this happen, or can you do this? And so yeah, that's mostly where things are coming from. Is it's derived whether through me or the Discraft team of Bob, of maybe Mike Wagner, of Shane.
It's got to be super fun for you to get to a point with any idea where you're like, ooh, this is going to be awesome. Can't wait to like pitch it to Ken and then see how he reacts to it. Like, that's got to be a fun process for you to.
Right.
Yeah, Ken doesn't.
Like, I'm imagining just every night you're laying in bed at the end of the day going, this is what I've taken this to. Like, I'm the dude that takes the things to the GOAT. Like, is that you just every day at this stage? Like, are you still in the honeymoon phase of this all, or like, is it set in?
I think it's moved from the honeymoon to
Let's get to work.
I mean, there's just a lot to do and a lot to consider. And so, as I said earlier, I'm the lone employee. However, lots of resources, but like I'm, in a lot of cases directing the resources and saying like, hey, we need this or we need that or let's do this and how do we execute it? And so, and then also launching a wholesale program.
Right.
That's in itself just a ton of work. And then we're not even talking about the direct to consumer side and then, the opportunity side or the content side. So I'm, also writing articles and doing lots of things. So I'm trying to, at the end of the day, like if I can say, all right, I'm made some good moves or good decisions or, pushed us a little bit further along, I'm good. But yeah, my kids keep me up all night, so I'm always laying awake in the middle of the night, thinking of, what I said, what I did, or what I should do or we should do, and then, ultimately, like, I think one of my skills, if I had to pat myself on the back or say I was good at something, is I feel like I can decipher what will work or what won't work. I don't necessarily have like, I can't always put the full plan together, but if I can usually work through things and say, yes, this will be well received or this won't. And then, all right, if it won't, what can we do or what can I do to, make it well received or make it a successful campaign or opportunity for Ken, or how do I pitch this to Ken? Because a lot of this for Ken, we got to think about Ken. He's going from zero essentially to 100.
Right.
Like,
right.
It's a lot. Like, it's a lot. Like the spotlight is back on him, and so that's a that's something to keep in mind too. Is like, and I almost feel bad because lots of opportunities are coming, but that means I'm like always bringing things to Ken, and there's sometimes it doesn't work because of scheduling or because of this, and like so it
doesn't feel like, I don't know Ken, but like it doesn't feel like he's coming to you and saying, I've got a great idea for a reel or a TikTok. Like that's just not how his brain has got to work, and so you got to put that work in.
But
and maybe in a time in Ken's life too where he like